The billionaire mocked the waiter in German to impress his girlfriend, thinking the waiter didn't understand. But the hardworking young man, who had studied multiple languages to survive, replied back in flawless German and silenced the entire ballroom. It all happened inside the glittering walls of the Grand Berlin Hotel during the European Business Gala, a night when the wealthy, powerful, and influential gathered to celebrate themselves. Remember, greatness comes from resilience. Share this story to inspire someone today. At the center of the room sat Heinrich Krüger, a German billionaire whose arrogance filled more space than the chandeliers above. He wore a black tuxedo, his silver hair slicked back, his voice booming across the tables. By his side sat Clara, his much younger girlfriend, elegant in a silver gown. Heinrich lived to impress her. He showed off his money, his connections, his influence. But tonight, he wanted to impress her in another way, by humiliating someone he considered beneath him. And his eyes quickly landed on the waiter. The young man's name was Kwame Mensah, a 24-year-old student from Ghana. By day, he studied international economics and languages at Humboldt University. By night, he worked in the hotel, carrying trays and pouring wine to pay for tuition and send money back home. Kwame's gift was his discipline. He had taught himself English, French, Spanish, and German. Every phrase he memorized came from hours of hard work. Every word carried the weight of sacrifice. But to Heinrich, he was just a waiter in a bow tie, another nameless servant in a room full of power. When Kwame approached Heinrich's table to pour wine, Heinrich leaned toward Clara and smirked. "Watch this," he whispered. In English, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear, Heinrich said, "Tell me, waiter, where are you from? Africa, yes?" Kwame gave a polite nod. "Yes, sir, Ghana." Heinrich chuckled and turned to Clara. "Ah, Ghana. You see, darling, globalization at work. They come here and they serve our tables." The table laughed. A few neighboring guests smiled uncomfortably. Clara shifted slightly, her eyes glancing at Kwame with sympathy. But Heinrich wasn't finished. Switching to German, confident the waiter didn't understand, he said loudly, "Imagine that, Clara. These people actually believe they can be something, but in the end, they're only waiters. At least he doesn't understand me." The table roared with laughter. Heinrich leaned back, grinning proudly at Clara. But she didn't smile. Her eyes lingered on the waiter, who stood calmly, his face unreadable. Kwame placed the bottle gently on the table, straightened his posture, and looked Heinrich directly in the eye. Then, in perfect German, he replied, "With all due respect, Mr. Krüger, I understand every single word. And believe me, I speak more languages than you have ever closed business deals. While you inherited your fortune, I earned every piece of knowledge through hard work." The room froze. Laughter died instantly. Guests turned, stunned. Even the music from the string quartet faltered. Clara's lips parted slightly. For the first time that night, her eyes filled with genuine admiration, not for Heinrich, but for the man who had just put him in his place. Kwame continued, his voice steady, now switching effortlessly into English. "In this hall, I may wear the uniform of a waiter, but knowledge cannot be hidden by clothes. Respect is not earned by money, it is earned by dignity." Then in French he added, "Respect ne peut pas être acheté, il doit être gagné." The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. For a moment, no one moved. Heinrich's face turned red, his jaw tight. The smirk that had once played on his lips was gone. He reached for his glass, but his hand trembled slightly. The guests around him began to murmur. A few clapped softly, others nodded approvingly. Clara, his girlfriend, the very woman he had tried to impress, was now clapping openly, her eyes fixed on Kwame with admiration that Heinrich had never managed to win. The humiliation burned Heinrich's pride, but there was nothing he could say. He had been defeated, not with insults, but with intelligence, not with volume, but with dignity. Kwame gave a small bow, picked up the empty glasses, and turned away, walking calmly toward the service doors. The ballroom followed him with their eyes. Long after Kwame disappeared into the hotel's staff corridor, the guests kept whispering. Some shook their heads at Heinrich's cruelty. Others marveled at the young waiter's courage. A few even exchanged business cards, quietly saying they wanted to meet him again. At Heinrich's table, the atmosphere was broken. Clara's admiration had shifted entirely. She sat in silence, no longer holding his arm, no longer impressed by his billions. Heinrich tried to recover, forcing a laugh, pretending he didn't care. But deep down, he knew. He had entered the evening, hoping to show power. He left it exposed, humiliated in front of everyone who mattered to him. And all of it had happened inside the Grand Berlin Hotel. That night, no one remembered Heinrich's jokes. No one remembered the deals he bragged about. What they remembered was the young black waiter who stood tall and answered arrogance with intelligence. Because sometimes the loudest voice in the ballroom isn't the billionaire boasting at the table. Sometimes it's the quiet waiter with a tray who replies in your own language and silences you forever.